It's all you.
Thank you very, very much. Well, hey, welcome to What's All the Hype? A Ladder of Success, discussing the escalation clause in real estate in California. What does it mean? We go over some items on the list of the escalation clause, which I like to call the sharp clause, the clause that puts a little action into your offer and the kind of market that we have right now. So we're going to cover a couple different items today. We'll make it short and sweet and easy. First, we're going to cover, how does an escalation clause work? Will the seller accept an escalation clause? Will there be multiple offers during escalation clauses? When to use them? And when will the seller be reviewing those clauses, how that works or offers? And then to bid with very how-to confidence, and because every situation is very unique. So let's get started here with, how does an escalation clause work? And read from you the CAR's definition of an escalation clause, because I think that's really, really important here. If I can bring it up. Let's see here. What is an escalation clause? Defined by the California Association of Realtors. An escalation clause, also to be called a relative bid or sharp bid, like I like to call it, is a provision added to an offer or counteroffer where the buyer's offer X dollars or more than the next highest offer. For example, an offer that states that the purchase price will be $1,000 higher than any other offer contains an escalation clause. So this clause is really, really important in this market right now because there's multiple bids and it can be used very effectively, but it has to be used wisely. So how does it work? An escalation clause, they vary significantly. And the general addendum that you add to your offer has a few basic components, okay? What is the original offer, purchase price of the home? Offer of the purchase price, excuse me. How much will that price be escalated above other competitive bids? And what is the maximum amount that the purchase price can reach in case of multiple offers? Now, the last one is really important, the maximum offer amount. You have to put a maximum clause language in here for that escalation. And the obvious reason is because you don't want your offers to just keep rising at $1,000 over the offer until it reaches a maximum of, well, gosh knows what that might be. So they have to include the maximum price you'd be willing to offer. So for example, if Mr. Brown offers $100,000 for a home or a piece of real estate, the realtor will add an escalation clause in case of a higher competing offer. That offer will increase $2,000 above the competing offer. That's how it works. Now, her escalation clause goes up to a maximum of $110,000. So if no other offers are submitted, her offer remains at $100,000. And this is really, really important because obviously putting this language in there does a few things. Will a seller accept an escalation clause? Depends on how they're putting it. There's so many different variances of an escalation clause, but really one I want to hit on today is putting a max on your clause is huge. And I think that, in fact, I talked to a realtor in our office over last week that actually gave us the inspiration for this topic. And I was talking to Brad Jones with the Shannon Jones group team. And we mentioned he mentioned the maximum. And I think it's really important because in an environment where bids go up substantially, you want to be comfortable with the offer that you're giving. And if you're going to give an escalation clause, you surely want to know the top end of your client's comfortable position offering X number of dollars. It's really, really important. And I think a lot of people that put these clauses together don't always think them through. And I think sometimes it can be relatively uncomfortable if that price becomes something substantially let's just say, larger than they'd like to pay. So let's move on to the second, which is, will the seller accept an escalation clause? There are some that simply state that they won't accept those clauses. They prefer that the buyer submits exactly what they're willing to pay for the home or the real estate. They prefer this kind of thing because they'd rather have the buyers just bid their highest price up front. And I know sometimes that's impossible to do. We all have buyers and clients out there that tell us that their top price is going to be X. And then when you get into the heat of negotiations and their love for the home, their emotional attachment, that number exceeds what they told you. And sometimes that can be very frustrating. So even writing the escalation clause can be tough because your client may not have a max in their mind where they want to be, especially in today's environment where payments are cheap and interest rates are low. Prices might be high, but the cost of these, the cost of money is so cheap that it really tends to... Hello? Oh, someone's on there, we can't hear. Anyway, so basically, whether or not they'll accept an escalation clause, you'll probably know. I mean, obviously, when you're writing offers, you know, when we talk about writing offers and when we're coaching clients, we always tell them, hey, make sure you reach out to the listing agent or broker to discuss what they're looking for in the offer. And when you're having that discussion, it's a time to ask, hey, would you accept an escalation clause in the offer? And it's important to ask the opinion of the listing agent, because when you do write the offer, the agent will remember you, that you did call to ask, that you did have that conversation. It's really, really important in being successful with your offers, including presenting your offer that way. But it's always important to know whether they're going to accept an escalation offer or not. So it's really, really important. Do we have a question? No. Okay.
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet. Okay. The escalation clause, to use it or not to use it. They should really only be used when the buyer is fairly confident that there'll be multiple offers and when the buyer expects to pay an increased price in the sale or the purchase price of the real estate. In this environment that we're currently in, that's where we picked this topic, was basically we are in a very competitive environment. I was out showing a client property this weekend, and appointments were every 15 minutes. And he had showings every 15 minutes for, I don't know, all day long, up until 5 o'clock. So is it a good time to use an escalation clause? It's the time to use an escalation clause. This is why they invented it. Buyers who submit an offer with an escalation clause are laying all their cards on the table. So the seller immediately knows what they're willing to pay for the home. So this is kind of a poker game in a way. I mean, it's an effective strategy for making sure that you're in when the bids go up and the price of the home escalates with offers. But at the same time, they know how far you're going to bid because you will have taken time, you will have listened to this Facebook live chat and known that there's a maximum dollars that your client's willing to pay. And at that time, the seller knows. The seller knows that you're willing to pay X number of dollars at the time that you lay it out there. If the offer ends up being the only offer submitted, however, the offer remains at the original price that you offered it at. So it only kicks in when there's multiple offers. Now, I have to say too, that one of the things you need to add in your escalation offer is a verification of other offers. Because if you're offering to go up $2,000 on a $100,000 offer up to $110,000, $120,000, you're going to need verification. You need the seller and the broker to agree to provide you verification of those offers, because you're not just going to take their word for it. Hey, you got the deal, 120 grand, congratulations. No, you need verification of those offers, verification that process took place. It can be a little troublesome sometimes, but this is the environment you're in. You're trying to be successful with your offers, with your clients, and getting them accepted. And in this type of environment, it's very difficult. So there's things that people are doing with their offers now that they haven't done over the last, maybe the last couple of years. They've gotten there, but a lot of people were shortening terms. Some people are getting their lender to waive appraisals and things like that. But at the end of the day, escalation clause is another tool in your belt to use to help you get your buyer the best chance possible of getting their offer accepted, which is, at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get paid to do a job. And if you do a really good job, you'll get paid. So that's really an important tool to have in your chest. Now, a realtor representing the seller will know, however, to counter offer certain things. And sometimes what they'll try and do is counter offer a buyer at a higher escalated price, since your buyer's, clearly willing to pay more. Now, there's no guarantee that the buyer would agree to that, but because your cards are on the table, you're going to have to expect that the seller's agent, seller's broker, may try to do something like that, as they're trying to get the highest and best price for the home. So that's kind of the kicker, is you're putting all your cards in the table, and that can be difficult to manage it at some point.
Jason,
do we have any questions?
Question.
Yeah.
So Melanie would like to know, how would they verify other offers? Through showing the other contracts that were submitted, or a different way?
Absolutely. You want to see a copy of the contract? Absolutely. That's the only way to see it. You see a copy of all the contracts that have been submitted and their prices, and that's it. You don't need to see the whole contract if we're just talking price, but you need to see them, and you need to see to make sure that they have, the dates are correct and the property is correct, and everything, everything with the offer, just as if you were reviewing for your own seller. You're reviewing it for the buyer.
Got it.
Any other questions?
No, not yet.
Okay. So my point of that, in the multiple offer situation where you put your escalation clause in there, is that the buyer gives up a lot of negotiating power and potentially leaves money on the table because of that. But it's a risk that everyone's willing to take. I mean, if there's 30 offers on every property currently in the market at a certain price range, ask your buyer what they're willing to do. I mean, this clause is a tool for you to use, but you also have to sit down with your buyer and say, what are you willing to do to get this house? And also that also takes, the fact that maybe the buyer or buyers love the house, or maybe they don't love it so much. And you find out through that process where they stand. So the escalation clause not only allows a tool for getting your offers accepted, but it also gives you a little bit more insight to the buyer, especially if your buyer, let's say your buyer you got from Zillow, or you got it from realtor.com. Whoa, right? You don't even know who these people are, right? I mean, you don't know them. And they're saying, yeah, I'll pay this, I'll pay that. You just don't know them. The escalation clause is a tool you can use to ask more questions. That sounds something like this. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I realize that we've seen the house, we've seen it 3 times in the last 2 days. I know you really want the home. There's a competitive bid situation, I mean, multiple offers. And one of the ways that we get our offers accepted is by offering an escalation clause. And you explain to them what it is that we've gone over today, and say, would you be willing to do something like that? The answer they give you is going to be a a tell into who they are, what they want, what they're willing to pay, who's in charge, you know, and figuring out who they are a little bit more. And that actually could work to your advantage, because you may decide through this process, if you're listening to your intuition, you'll know whether these buyers are real. Because at the end of the day, the people that aren't willing to put their cards on the table in a multiple bid situation in an environment like we're experiencing right now in the marketplace may not be real buyers. They maybe just want to look around and ultimately looking for the right deal. There's tons of those people. There's tons of people saying, you know, if I find the right deal, you and everybody else, mister, everybody wants the good deal. Everyone wants the off market before we can bid, and we want it $20,000 under market, and oh yeah, and it needs to be finished, turnkey, ready to go. And oh yeah, can they pay for closing costs too, the seller? That's not happening in this market. It's not happening. So, you know, you get a sense of who they are by asking big questions. So I guess an escalation clause is another great interview question when you're taking your buyers on before you get to a house they like, and say, you know, I've got a couple questions for you. In the event that this happens, would you be willing to do something like this? An escalation clause where we do this. And the answers you get will help you determine whether you're going to do business with these people, or you're going to do what I call referring them to another agent, because you're just not going to waste your time. And it's really, really important to know the difference. And the more questions you ask, the more successful you're going to be with your offers, your buyers, and ultimately at the end of the day, the sellers that you collect as well. So,
okay, Jason, one other question.
mhm.
What if the offers have non-disclosure agreements?
The offers that have been received by the seller.
I think the other offers that you want to look at, what if those had non-disclosure agreements?
Then the listing agent would tell you when you called in to talk about the escalation clause, if you accept them or not, would say, no, we're not accepting those. Especially if you told them that you're going to need verification of those offers in the event that they were to use the escalation language in your offer. Because you're going to ask them, are you accepting escalation offers, addendums with our offers? Are you accepting those? Because I'm going to need verification of the other offers if you do. If they say no, then you know the answer.
Okay.
So that would be the answer to that question.
Okay. I think that's all for right now.
Okay. And let's move on to about what the seller agents have done and how they're reviewing the offers, because that's an important part of the process as well. And, you know, this whole process in anything you do is important that you have communication with the listing agent and your buyers. And you tell them what's going on all the time, reviewing with them, understanding. And in the hot real estate market, a wide variety of offer review processes can be available to use. So some might specify, for example, that the property is going to be viewed on Friday. So be on market Friday, and all offers will be reviewed the following Thursday. And the sellers and the realtor will make final decision on that day. Well, you need to know that. You need to know that you've got some time to get that offer and review that property, tour that property, and get it to them, because next week is when all the offers are going to be reviewed. It's very, very important. So this situation can be ideal for an escalation clause. Why? Because when a buyer knows it's all or nothing offer, the other sellers take a back and forth approach. So it's just really, really important that if they collect offers for buyers for 1 week and then respond to a handful of the best offers by saying, send us your highest and best offer, you're already in the game. So your escalation clause, boom, you hit there and you say, I'm going to pay this, and I'll pay $2,000 over this amount to this maximum. So now your highest and best offer is in the books already. So you don't have to respond to that. You have. Now, what I will tell you is that you can't depend on the listing agent to make that determination, because if they've got 30 offers that they're reviewing, they need to know that you're at the top of the list with your escalation clause. So your job's not done yet. You have to call back, not text, not email. You got to get that professional on the phone and remind them that I'm Jason DuFault. My buyers are Mr. or Mrs. Brown, and we have an escalation clause on our offer to a maximum of this. Do you remember that offer? Yes, I do, Jason. Thank you very much for calling. We'll be in touch. Because you can't expect them to remember. And I know it's their job and they have that responsibility, but that doesn't mean they have the ability to do it. So it's your job to make sure that that happens.
Okay, you ready for another question?
Yep.
Can a seller or their agent counter your offer to a higher number, even if the original offer is over asking? Can a seller or their agent?
A seller and their agent can counter any offer with any number, with anything.
There you go. You know,
right?
Hearing you talk about this though, because I do work with the new agents so much in the onboarding process. So a lot of times I hear brand new agents talk about that communication with the other agent that you just mentioned is so important, you know, to open the lines of communication with the other agent. But I think a lot of new agents might feel intimidated at first. So are there any tips that you give or you can give to new agents when they, you know, are maybe working with another agent that perhaps is experienced and seasoned and they're just starting out, and you know, what are the best ways to navigate that dynamic?
Well, when you're, first of all, you have to understand that the fear of calling a listing agent is to be expected. And for all the reasons that you can think of, plus about a handful of ones you don't even know of. So really what you're dealing with here is your own fear of whatever that is. So you have to come up with a protocol to put in place and say it to yourself. I believe in written instructions, visualization. So write it down. Say, I fear calling Jason DuFault because I don't know what I'm doing, and he'll know that I know what I'm not know what I'm doing. He'll know it's my first transaction, and I intend to do it anyway. Excuse me. So that's what you do. And then you pick up the phone and you're just brutally honest and be yourself. Hey, Jason, this is Jason. And I just want to let you know that I represent so-and-so buyer, and we're looking to put the offer together. Is there anything you'd like to see in the offer that we need to put on there besides obviously the price you're looking to get on this? Anything you can give me that would be helpful in putting my offer together? What are you looking to see? And they'll tell you things like, make sure there's a cover letter on there that summarizes your offer. Make sure that the terms say this, seller's choice for this. Make sure we're splitting escrow fees, whatever they're looking for. Close in 45 days, all sorts of neat stuff. Those are the things you're looking for. Those are helpful hints, and it engages them with you because they're going to remember when you call. They're going to remember the hesitation in your voice, the fear in your comments. They're going to remember all that. And when you call them back to let them know that you've submitted an offer and you'd like to discuss it with them, they're going to remember that you called them before. So it's a fear protocol that you have to be in place, another tool in your belt to be successful. And if you do those things, if you do that one thing, you'll be more successful than 99% of the other agents out there that don't make the phone call.
That's awesome. That's great advice.
Yeah, it works. And if you write it down and if you do it over the course of your career, it only takes about 3 months, 4 months to do that. And eventually you won't have to write it down anymore. It'll just be the way you do things.
Right.
And you can share it with somebody else and help them down the road.
Okay, and then a couple more questions.
Yeah.
This person logged on a little late, so they're asking, how does the escalation clause work in a highest and best counter offer situation? In case you didn't already cover that.
That's okay. It basically escalation clause puts you in the running in that without having to resubmit, because you've got the purchase price, your escalation amounts, and your max. Now, like I said before, you need to call the listing agent and remind them you have an escalation addendum in there, and that, you know, we're at a max of X number of dollars and we're already there, so there's no need for us to resubmit. That being said, hold on, wait a minute. If you haven't written anything down, write this down. Call your buyer and say, you want to change anything in your offer? You want to change your maximum price? Ask them that question, because we're getting counteroffer. We're set with what we want to do, but it's a great time to review it with your client. Anytime you have a chance to reach out to your client for any reason other than to say hello is a great time to call. So that's the answer to that.
Perfect. Thank you. That's it for now.
Okay. Remember, when you do the escalation clause, you are giving away a little bit of a competitive advantage in normal negotiations, right? In normal negotiations, there's a back and forth. I would tell you that these are not normal times. I would tell you that the escalation clause, if used correctly and effectively, can be the most successful use of a tool in your tool belt to get your offer accepted, especially if you do it in a way that creates a maximum price cap for your buyer, that protects them so they're not buying something that's outrageously more expensive than they're willing to do. And we all know right now that most people are buying a payment. We know that if you're approved for 750,000 and the list price is 700, you're probably going to be writing a lot of offers at 750 because you're buying a payment. The payment's X for 750. That's all you can afford. That's what you're going to be bidding on. It's just kind of the way it is right now. But in normal times, the escalation clauses aren't needed. But like I said, these aren't normal times. This is another tool in this type of environment where multiple offers are expected and where they're needed. Because, I mean, people are just putting more and more offers, and sellers are needing to see, they don't really need to, but they're seeing a lot of these offers at one time, and what makes yours stand out more than others, right? Terms, repairs, loans, and price, right? I mean, that's really important. And you the agent, you're the one that should be trying to present these things in person. Difficult to do, and most listing agents won't let you near their sellers, which is a tragedy, because you should be able to close a deal in person. It would be fun. If you've never done it, I've done it. I can say I've done it. I've tried to do it every single time I have a buyer. And most listing agents won't let you near their sellers. But when you present your offer in front of a seller and have your buyers available by phone to negotiate a deal on the table right there and then, it's an amazing process. You should all strive to do that someday. As we go down the road, there's less and less people that have actually experienced that, but you want to set yourself apart, ask that question of a listing agent. I have an escalation clause in my offer. I'll pay a maximum of this at $2,000 an incremental this. And I'd like to present this in front of your seller in person. Can we get that done this week? You should ask, you should practice asking that question, because it's your responsibility to get that offer in front of that seller, no matter what it takes. Not cutting out the listing agent. You're just saying, it's my job to represent my buyer in the best way possible. It's my job to get it in front of them, and emailing it to the listing agent ain't doing the job. FYI. So in this part, we're going to talk about bidding with careful confidence and know that each situation is different. So if you're considering this clause, right, you're probably researching circumstances around the seller's process of reviewing offers. Realtors' knowledge of normal practices and probable outcomes in your market will make your offer much more likely to succeed. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about doing things a little bit differently to make your offer different than those that are just like yours. But here's the kicker. The escalation clauses cause a lot of stress for home buyers. You have to manage the stress of your client during this process. You have to hold their hand. Even if you've never done an escalation clause, you have to act as if you have, because you have to make sure that your buyers are boiled down to the basics of their offer. And even though they're probably be a little resistant to offer an escalation clause because it does do those things of putting all your cards on one table, kind of saying, this is all I got. You just have to manage their expectations in the process. Make sure that you're doing a good job of that. Be realistic. And really, to be comfortable with how much of a competing bid that you're willing to give really is described in this escalation clause, the buyer's will to give money. But you need to be realistic and honest with this, because it's very important. If someone says, I'm willing to pay $750,000 and they sign it, they're on the hook if this thing goes to $750,000 if they accept the offer. And it can be very stressful. This is a stressful time, and this particular clause doesn't make it any easier. Very, very stressful. So you have to ask them how they're feeling beyond what you normally might be. Even if you're a really good caretaker, and you like to rescue your clients from the stress of this process, you just got to make sure that you're doing a good job so they don't feel victimized in this whole process by saying, my realtor made me do this. That's not what you want to hear. You offer it to them as a choice. You recognize that they can do this, and it will help their offer have a better competitive edge, and managing their expectations as well during that process. Also, when you are doing this process and you're asking them to insert an escalation clause in California, where it's an addendum, we don't have an acceleration clause to my knowledge, with the items that we talked about, which I'm going to review with you again. Basically, the buyer shouldn't be tempted to escalate their purchase price above a figure that they're comfortable paying. You never want to have the price be more than they're willing to pay. And you don't want to push them there, because that can create a lot of problems for you and your broker down the road when they buy a house that they didn't really want to pay that much money for. It could be, you don't want to put yourself in that position. At the same time, they should realize if inventory and interest rates are low, that aggressively pursuing a good home at a good price is necessary for winning in a competitive market. It's necessary to win. If they're about winning the home that they fell in love with, the one that they visualize their holidays, the one they visualize coming home to, the one they've been waiting for to raise their children and grandchildren in, then to win in this competitive environment in a location that they love, this is a tool to get them to the winning spot to buy the home. Of course, along with your leveraged ability with your team at Keller Williams, leadership, and all the people involved in the process, from escrow to title to the loan officers, this is the competitive advantage. This is why they do business with you, because you offer them solutions that other people don't. Now, keep in mind, I talked about this earlier during this presentation. Potential buyers who are looking to get a steal often are not buyers at all. So when I talked about this before, and I said, this is part of your buyer profile, your kind of investigation into your buyer. If you refer to them, you'll remember I talked about Zillow or Realtor.com or wherever you may get your leads from. This is a conversation you want to ask. You want to go down that. and have that story and say, if this were to happen, which we can expect, multiple offers, low rates, very competitive market, multiple offers being reviewed in a week, would you be willing to put an escalation clause? Well, Jason, what's an escalation clause? And you'll explain it to them. And you'll explain that they'll be protected by the maximum price that you'll put on the clause, although it will automatically go up every time there's a higher offer to that particular price. You'll also explain to them that even though they put a maximum price of $110,000 or $120,000 on that home, that they may actually get a counter offer above that amount if other offers have yet to come in, which is likely not the case in this environment, but to be prepared for that. But nonetheless, would they be willing to do it? If they say, well, like I said before, I use the example, we want the deal off market. I can see everything on Zillow. I can see everything on realtor.com. I want the one that's off the market, and I want a deal. So I want closing costs, and I want, at least 5 to 10% below market on anything I'm going to bid on. Then you make the determination. I'll tell you what I hear. I hear, you're not doing business with me, mister, because you don't sound like a buyer. You sound like someone that's just looking for a deal. And this isn't that market. If you're looking for a deal, you need to wait. How long? No idea. But I know this, at some point, the cost of funds is going up. And if the cost of funds go up and the prices don't go down, you're going to pay a lot more per month for the house that you're looking for a deal on. Not to mention, if they don't have enough cash to put a lot of money down, they probably couldn't buy a deal with the money that they have. So you want to make sure that you use this as a way to filter out those types of buyers that aren't buyers. So let's go over the clause itself. Make sure that you know that you're going to need these things in the clause. It's going to be an addendum to your purchase agreement, and you're going to mark that little box that says addendum, and it'll be your first addendum because it's the first one you made, right? Number one, it's first one. So you put in there that this is an escalation clause. You put in the original offer for the purchase price, so your offer, that's in the addendum. You'll have the escalation dollar amounts. So we will escalate our price above any offer at a rate of X, $1,000, $2,000, whatever it's going to be, and be willing to pay a maximum amount purchase price of X. And the most important part of the language in that clause, buyer to require seller to provide us with verification of those offers that exceeded our first purchase price offer. Very, very important part. Because if you don't get them to agree to that, they don't have to provide it to you. Very, very important part of that. So those types of scenarios are important to discuss with them prior to. This language is important to include on your escalation clause. Of course, talk to your coach, talk to the broker, talk to your leadership in the office. Remember that the seller may not be accepting acceleration clauses at all. So you need to find out prior to putting one together or offering it as a solution to a possible multiple offer situation. You can expect multiple offers in this environment, but you want to make sure that they're accepting those acceleration clauses anyway. Review the review process with the listing agent. How are they going to be reviewing the offers? Are they going to be doing it all at one time? Is it going to be a week from now? Because this is an ideal situation when they review them a week from now for your escalation clause. You just want to know predictably for your buyers what your offer is going to look like and how it will compete. And then you want to bid with confidence. So you want to make sure that the numbers that you're putting on paper for your client, that the ones that they come up with, you want to make sure that they're the ones that come up with those numbers, not you. And you can suggest to them what you see closing in the area so they already know the comparable sales. but you want them to come up with the numbers. They're the ones that are going to sign the agreement, and you don't want to push them to a number that they don't want to pay. Because like I said, that causes a lot of problems, a lot of drama, trouble for your office down the road. God knows what that could be. I just know it wouldn't be good. And you want to be effective for these people. And you also want to give yourself hope, because you're working hard for your dollar right now. You're working really hard. You're showing multiple properties. You're showing multiple buyers, multiple properties, multiple days in a row. You're waiting for your time on showtime for those people that are using that. You're doing your COVID peds. You're doing so much to get there. When you do make an offer, you don't want it to be just any old offer. And remind yourself too, when you're having that discussion, discuss with the listing agent what they're looking for in the offer, so you can let them know that an escalation clause is coming attached to yours, but also to find out what else you need to include in the offer that you're making to be successful for your buyers in this terribly competitive market. But I did hear someone say the other day, they said something to the effect, like, I hope this ends soon. Well, be careful what you wish for. Enjoy this market. Be successful in this market. Make it work for you and your buyers. Pick up some listings where you felt maybe you weren't going to get any, and make the most of it. Because when this market changes, and it will, you want to make sure that you took advantage of a time where you could do as many transactions and help as many people as possible. And that's pretty much all I've got for today. Are there any more questions or concerns about this process?
So I'm not sure, it's Deborah back. I'm not sure what questions Kim had shared with you. So can I run just a few by, and if you've already covered them, I'll move on.
Yeah.
Somebody was asking, how would they verify other offers? You just shared that. Through doing the other contracts that were submitted or something else. So I think that. What if the offers have non-disclosure agreements? Did you cover that one?
We did cover it, just to make sure, obviously if you're asking if they're accepting escalation clauses in their offers, they'll probably say no, because they have some, and there'd be certain ones they couldn't give to you. So you have to make a determination.
Can a seller or their agent counter your offer to a higher number, even if the original offer is over asking? I think you touched a little on that.
Yeah, I just said they can counter anything, anytime.
Yep. How does the escalation clause work in a highest and best counter offer situation? Did that question?
I believe so. You are putting your highest and best on the table at the moment you put it on there with the addendum. But remember, if they do get an email back, you want to remind the listing agent that yours is already on there. But before you do that, call your buyer and say, look, they sent this over. Ours is already on the table. Do you want to make any changes?
And somebody was asking for a copy of the escalation clause. Do you have something that we can share with them, or?
I have a card form that I don't know if that's. See here, I don't know. No, CAR doesn't have any language to that, but I'll tell you what, if you've got a problem, reach out to your leadership or to your broker and ask for that language, and that's the best way to get it. Everyone's going to have a little bit different way they use it.
Yeah, and I have used these before. I have shared them with some of my coaching clients, and they have been successful. As well as myself in using that escalation clause. I've also had agents that refuse them. They don't want to have them as part of the counter process, so they counter them out.
Yes, it happens, and that's why you want to call and ask.
Yeah, and the key components, like you said, is making certain that you note that the amount that it's going to be escalated over the other offers and your maximum, putting that in there, and then making certain they request a copy of the highest and best prior that forced them to go to the higher number.
Yes, yeah, very.
I've even asked for the agency disclosure to show that, they do have a signed agency disclosure that goes along with that contract. It wasn't just a made up contract, so.
Absolutely, that's a great point. Absolutely, because you know, you don't want to have them pay the max price just because.
Yeah.
And I think explaining that to your client is really important so that they feel comfortable. Like, I'm sure a question would be, well, Deborah, how do I know that they're just not going to charge me $750,000? Well, I'll tell you how. This is the way we verify that, and it's part of the offer that you make. Because they're always worried. I mean, it's their money.
Right.
It's their $4,300 a month, right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Any other questions out there for Jason? Nothing popping in. I think we're good, Jason. Thank you, as always.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot for the opportunity. And we'll be back next month with another a show of What's All the Hype?
Watch for the topic. It'll be.
That's right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.